Happy Halloween, friends. Welcome to tonight's special Halloween edition of a new series I'd like to introduce. Local Haunts. In Local Haunts, I will share the history and stories from haunted locations in my area. I live in Wisconsin, and we have quite the list of haunted locations to explore. Tonight we're going to dive into 3 of the scariest ghost stories from near my hometown, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. The first one's mine. The following story is one that I struggle to tell, even now, almost 20 years later. It was one of the scariest nights of my life, and definitely still haunts me. But before we get into that, a huge shout out goes out to my friend Travis Dewitz of Travis Dewitz Photography. No, I'm not sponsored, I just really support his work. Not only did he do a fantastic job on my best friend's wedding photos, but he does amazing work for many local organizations, including our police departments, fire departments, local festivals, news stations, and much, much more. His photos have been featured on the local news and in many publications. All of his information, including his blog, will be in my description box below. Please go check out his work and tell him Mandy sent you. Travis, if you're listening, thank you for so many amazing photos featured in this video. I grew up in a small town, Wisconsin. Actually, a village. The village I grew up in had around 1,200 people near the city of Eau Claire, and as you can imagine, there wasn't a lot to do, especially for someone like me. I didn't enjoy attending school sporting events. Except for that one year my friend signed me up for the cheerleading squad, and I couldn't quit because if I quit, the coach said we wouldn't have enough cheerleaders to be considered a squad. But I digress. My family didn't attend church, and we weren't from the area. We were transplants, as my dad called us. I also have anxiety and depression, so it was unrealistic for me to participate in tons of big events. Besides going into the next town over to hang out at the mall occasionally, or going to select friends' houses, I enjoyed riding bike or reading. I also enjoyed spending time with my small friends group, exploring local haunted areas, which is where this story begins. About 15 miles out of the big city, there's a small unincorporated town on Highway 85 called Carryville. The Highway H Bridge was once the site of a ferry that ran from 1910 to 1964. The Carryville ferry brought traffic across the Chippewa River in the area later named the Chippewa Bottoms. It was one of 6 ferries, and it was last operated by Bill Elf from 1949 to 1964. Caryville is a popular location in the paranormal community, not just for us locals, but for people from hundreds of miles away. Even though you literally miss it if you blink. This town is full of haunted locations, including the Sandhill Cemetery, the old Springbrook School, and Springbrook Lutheran Church. In addition to those buildings and the cemetery, 240th Avenue is also known for paranormal activity. For a way more in-depth look into Caryville and its haunted history, check out the article in the description below by my friend Travis. While you're there, admire more of his amazing photography. It is really common for teenagers in this area and surrounding areas to explore the haunted locations after dark. Sadly, some have been known to vandalize the school and cemetery, but luckily I had respectful friends and we did nothing of the sort. One October night, close to Halloween, my friends and I were restless and there was nothing going on for the 10th weekend in a row. So all 4 of us piled into my friend's car, with the intention of heading to the Carryville School and Cemetery to see if we would experience any paranormal encounters. We headed to the cemetery first. It's known for apparitions, voices, unexplainable sounds, footsteps, and much more. For being a small town, the Sandy Hill Cemetery actually holds quite a few graves. This particular night, we drove up to the cemetery and immediately one of the male friends, we'll call him Jonathan, and I saw a figure standing in the fog. We could clearly tell it was a male, even though it was dark and foggy. The fog lights on the car were giving us enough light to make out that much detail. But as quickly as we saw him, he was gone. Again, this wasn't a huge town, not a huge cemetery, with tons of roads that cars could be parked on within the cemetery. We were the only vehicle there. It was October in Wisconsin, so it was cold, and with heavy fog that had rolled in, we were the only people around. I was certain of it. "Wait, so you saw that too?" I asked. "Yeah," Jonathan replied. My friend Haley was driving, so since we had literally just rolled up, she was still paying attention to shutting everything down on the car, so she didn't see the figure. Neither did Josh, who was indulging in a few too many adult beverages that night. Jonathan and I decided to go for a walk around, hoping to see the figure again. Haley and Josh stayed behind. They were an item, so they liked to spend time alone. I love exploring the paranormal, but I'm not a huge fan of running into other living people, so just in case, Jonathan knew to stick by me. We wandered around, looking at headstones and talking about them amongst ourselves. About halfway through the cemetery, while laughing about something stupid we had said, we froze. We heard laughter literally right in front of us. Even with the heavy fog, we would see someone standing that closely, but no one was there. Thinking it might be Josh playing tricks on us as he sometimes did, we called out. But from what we could tell, off in the distance, we saw two shadows standing in the fog in front of the car, so Haley and Josh were way too far away to be playing pranks. As we were almost back to the car, I noticed Jonathan had stopped a few feet behind me. "John, you okay?" I asked, but I got no response. "Not funny, John, you aren't going to scare me, but nice try," I said. But that's when I saw it. A small figure in the fog, maybe 15 feet in front of us. It appeared to be a little boy. I called out, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything?" But the little boy didn't move. "You don't have to be afraid. Are you lost? I can help you get home." And just like that, almost as if he was offended by the suggestion of going home, the figure was gone. "So you saw that too?" "I thought I had too many drinks," Jonathan said. "We have to look for him. What if that wasn't a spirit? What if that really was a little boy who needs our help?" I said. Jonathan nodded. We started searching the immediate area. After about 10 minutes, with no luck, Haley and Josh finally started hollering out for us, wondering if we wanted to move to the next location. We walked silently to the car, too shocked to speak. There was no way we were telling Josh and Haley. We needed time to process. We still wanted to visit the Carryville school, but Jonathan and I were both processing what we just witnessed, so neither of us was too involved in it. We got out of the car and wandered around, but neither of us spoke much, or tried to provoke any further paranormal activity. Another Caryville story comes from a close friend of mine, who let me share this story as long as I keep her anonymous. She was dared by her friends to spend half an hour in the Carryville school by herself. Her friends dropped her off and went off to check out the church and cemetery while they waited for her to be done. Back then, about 20 years ago, you could get into the little schoolhouse. I'm not sure if you still can now. I haven't been out that way since my late teens. Also back then, we didn't have smartphones. Cell phones could barely text, and you didn't dare call your friends until after 9 p.m. Otherwise you better have a lot of minutes on that phone. Yes, we paid for minutes of talk time, kids. And we couldn't take pictures or videos on our phones, let alone send emails and browse the internet. But back to this story. She was one of those tough girls that didn't back down from a challenge and wasn't afraid to do something by herself. So she made her way into the little schoolhouse, noting what time she stepped in, so she knew what time she was to be done. Everything was fine for the first few minutes. She just stood looking around with her flashlight. But around minute 4 was where it all took a turn for her. Her flashlight suddenly stopped working, and she had just put fresh batteries in it for this trip. Seconds before that, she said she had just felt as if she was being watched. She stood frozen in fear, not sure what to do because it was pitch black, and her tiny cell phone screen was the only light source she had. The screen was only about 2 inches long by 2 inches wide, as they commonly were back then, and it was a dim yellow glow. She started trying to inch towards the door to make her way out front, to wait for the rest of the time. When suddenly, someone or something played a few notes on the piano. She was so scared the flashlight and her cell phone dropped to the ground. She said she couldn't even let out a scream. She tried, but no noise came out. Bending down to retrieve her phone and flashlight, she cut her finger on something on the ground, but eventually felt around and found them a few inches from her feet. She called out, hoping one of her friends was playing a cruel joke on her, but no one answered. She continued to try making her way to the door slowly in the dark and heard footsteps a short distance behind her. Almost to the door, where at least she would be able to stand in the moonlight until her friends came back for her, she heard scraping on the chalkboard, almost as if someone was actually standing there, scraping their fingernails down it. This was enough. She ran out and didn't look back. She still had at least 10 more minutes before she would be picked up. She tried calling her friends to get there early, but she was in a dead zone. Calls and texts weren't going through. Service was really spotty back then once you left Eau Claire and headed towards Caryville on 85. She said as she stood there, minutes felt like hours, and she felt like she was being watched the entire time. Less than a minute before her friends came back, her flashlight turned back on. She's refused to return since that night. Next, let's travel to Elk Mound, Wisconsin. Elk Mound is a small village in Dunn County, slightly smaller than the village I grew up in. The population was 985 in 2021. Although the village is small, it has a rich history. The Mound Hill Park and Castle are the only monuments in America dedicated to the deceased rural letter carriers of Dunn County. The castle sits on the highest point of land in the area, and you can see up to 100 miles each way you look. It was built in 1937. It closed in 1987 due to being too unsteady for people to visit. But in 1994, a local group of high schoolers actually fixed it up and it was opened back up to tourists again. Personally, I enjoy the castle because it's secluded and quaint. The road leading up to it is long and not paved. It's impossible to travel once the snow starts sticking, so the castle is closed after October. I've been there multiple times as a teenager and in my early 20s. I haven't been back in my 30s, but plan to sometime in the next 4 years. It's rumored to be haunted by a young boy who fell from the top while playing on the uppermost part of the structure. The death has been confirmed, and many paranormal enthusiasts have experienced unexplainable events, including feeling sick or dizzy and hearing laughter. I myself always feel a heavy energy when I visit. A local friend of mine shared her experiences with me. My friends and I went to the Elk Mound Castle one Saturday night, just goofing off. As you know, there isn't much to do in our area, so it gave us a safe enough activity to do without getting into trouble. Plus, we loved visiting haunted spots after dark to see if we could connect with any spirits ourselves. We didn't always experience things, but it was thrilling just to be out at night in spooky places. This particular night, it was just the 3 of us, myself and 2 of my guy friends. We rolled up to the castle around 10 p.m., grabbed our flashlights and phones, and hopped out, making our way into the castle and up the stairs. We settled on the top deck. We just planned to sit and tell ghost stories and just pass the time, basically. Drew was telling us the version of history of the castle that he had heard. The castle is haunted by the spirit of a little boy who fell from the top. Him and his twin brother snuck out of the house and made their way there one day. They weren't supposed to be there on their own, so they were particularly happy with themselves for making it there without getting busted. They were playing tag and ran up the stairs up here to the top deck, and one of them didn't stop in time. He fell from the top, landing on the cement down below. For anyone, that fall would break bones, at the very least. For him, it ended his life instantly. Now he's said to be trapped here, reliving that day, Drew said. So we decided if we could engage with the spirit of the little boy by offering a mini Nerf football we had brought. If the spirit of the little boy who fell is present here tonight, we brought you a ball to play with. Roll it around or throw it at one of us so we know you're here, I said, placing the football about a foot in front of me. We didn't pause and wait for a response because we figured it was fake folklore. So, Jack continued with his version of the story. Well, I heard that the twins were here with their parents one day, just passing through as tourists. The boys were playing and chasing each other and ended up at the top. But one of them dared the other to stand at the edge and hold his arms out. Before the mom could even finish yelling out, the other twin pushed him off the edge, laughing the whole time his brother was falling. Wow, that's dark, I said. Suddenly, the little red football rolled about 6 inches. There was no wind this night. It was quiet and still. There hadn't even been a small breeze the entire day. Did you see that? I exclaimed. Go ahead, it's your ball. You can throw it if you want, Drew said out loud. Still a little uneasy from the ball moving on its own, we switched the subject to something lighter. I can't remember what, but we were all busting out in laughter. Until we heard loud laughter coming from only about 2 feet away from us near the edge of the rooftop. We all fell silent and confirmed with each other what we just heard. Okay, so we aren't crazy. We all heard that? I asked. Yup, said Drew. Sure did, said Jack. We decided to take a break. It was getting heavy, so we wandered down to the car and grabbed energy drinks out of the cooler. I was heading back into the bottom floor of the castle, just kicking the rocks around on the floor, thinking about what we had just experienced. When all of a sudden, the Nerf ball came flying off the roof. Even in the darkness, I could see it clear as day. Real funny, Jack. I stopped mid-sentence when I realized Jack and Drew were still over by the car. There was no way he could have made it to the top of the castle, kicked the football, and made it down and all the way back to the car. I'm not ashamed to say I went running out of there, letting out a scream. That was enough for me. I got in the car telling them that they were welcome to hang out if they wanted to, but I'd be in the safety of the... We left, but we went back numerous times since then. We've never had such strong evidence. Well, friends, thanks for hanging out with me for this long video. I really hope you enjoyed this local hauntings video. I'd love to do more of these in the future. Hit the like button and leave a comment if you want to see more of these. Happy Halloween. Stay safe out there tonight and every night. See you tomorrow, friends.